All right, welcome everyone. This is Public Lab's call to wrap up a recent research area review on resources on wastewater pollution and stormwater pollution. So for the last few months, we've been hosting our regular weekly drop-in open calls and talking about this topic. We've been going out into the field and testing some DIY methods for wastewater monitoring. And we've also been talking to people and talking to people who are doing wastewater and stormwater monitoring. So we've been sharing materials about this work on the website for the past few months. And what we want to do on this call is just share the highlights from that collaborative review period, and especially talk about how people like community members in can start to become aware of stormwater and wastewater pollution issues and start to investigate it through some community science methods. So if you're new to this topic, or if you're a seasoned researcher working on this, hopefully there's something in there for everyone. For the second half of this call, at the top of the hour after a little break, we'll have open discussion time where we can share questions, resources, and one thing I'm hoping we can also talk about in light of some recent natural disaster scenarios that have been happening, what you can do when sort of like regular pathways for dealing with stormwater and wastewater pollution might not be functioning. So what's out there for more urgent situations as well. So hopefully that's something that we can discuss together. And I'm going to start with some introductions. Welcome, Virginia. So since we're a pretty small group, I think we can just go around and introduce ourselves. So if you want to share your name and maybe where you're calling in from and anything that you're looking forward to hearing or talking about today, that'd be great. If you prefer to paste that in the chat, or type that in the chat, that's fine too. I'll start. So my name is Jeanette Lim, and I am the research manager at Public Lab. I'm calling in from Bellingham, Washington. And it's typically a very wet location, I think similar to where others are living. And I'm looking forward to learning about what sort of like wastewater and stormwater issues are happening in everyone else's locations as well. So really appreciate you being here. And I will, we can popcorn it to someone when we're done. So I'll popcorn it over to Kristen.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. And Jeanette and I just met a couple weeks ago. Our paths crossed in Bellingham, because that's where I'm calling from as well. And the organization I work for, Resources, I'm the pollution prevention specialist there, and a lot of my work stems around wastewater, particularly stormwater. So excited to collaborate with you all to see some of the things that you've been cooking up, and happy to share my materials with you as well, because stormwater and wastewater for that matter is really a community effort. Thanks.
Alejo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, well, my name is Alejo Bonifacio. I'm the research curation fellow in the topic of water. Well, all these last 3 months, we was working with Jeanette about some tools, wikis, and information and research supports about forms and ways to study wastewater in water, mainly fresh water. It's just Alana to continue.
Thanks, Alejo. Hi, you guys. My name is Alana Moore. I am calling in from New Orleans, Louisiana, where we have ample wastewater issues. As y'all know, Hurricane Ida passed through and really disrupted the city's infrastructure, both in terms of our drainage as well as our power systems, which run our pumps kind of thing. So yeah, the city has been experiencing a lot of flooding, as well as a lot of not existent trash pickup, which amplifies the flooding and wastewater issues. So it's pretty gross down here. And Virginia, I believe, I'll pop to you. I think she put her response in the chat.
Thanks, Virginia. So it looks like you work in Argentina as well. Oh yeah, no worries. No worries. It was really nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. All right, so yeah, if other folks join, then we can pause for them as well. But we're going to start with a little bit of a presentation just to guide us through some of those resources that we created over the last few months. I'm going to share my screen for a little bit, and then 45 minutes roughly past the hour, or sorry, yeah, 45 minutes past the hour, we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll regroup at that time. So I will share my screen now. I'm going to move this Zoom window over, so you might see me looking at kind of like weird spots. All righty, so share screen. Okay, can you see a title slide there? Cool. And also if the Zoom window that you have is blocking the slides, then feel free to just either exit. You can exit the full screen, or you can hide host panel. I'm not going to be doing anything exciting over here on my side, so you can just look at the slides. Okay, so we're here to talk about wastewater. I wanted to open this up with just a question, because this is sort of something that I thought to myself when I first started gathering information on this topic, but just to take a second and think, what do you think of when you hear the term wastewater? And feel free to just type stuff in the chat, whatever comes to your mind, or come off mute and just say anything. The next slide will kind of gather some things together that seem common.
I hate to say it, but my first thought is sewage, because like waste and water equals sewage, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe bad odor, disgusting water.
Yeah. Kirsten.
Also,
oh yeah, go ahead, Lana.
I would say also here in Louisiana and along the river, we have so many refineries, so it's like wastewater as in the byproduct of whatever they're creating.
Yep. And then I see Kristen as well added sewer water and storm water. Yeah. So in the course of gathering materials and sort of seeing what was out there about this topic, particularly for community scientists, a lot of those same things, came up. Go back. So if you look at the top of the images for now, so sewage, one of the first things I think that comes to mind. Wastewater, I think, is often commonly associated with sanitary wastewater. Used water, really just in any capacity. So that's sort of how at Public Lab, at least, we approached this generic term, was just like any used water. So that included, like Alana, you're saying, like industrial effluent wastewater that they're producing. It could be containing chemicals. It could be just heated up like to a high degree. So that's what's being released into the receiving body of water. For me, a big question was like, where does it go? Like, I think I maybe had an idea of what happened to wastewater, but I didn't fully understand before I started looking into this topic, what happened to it and where it ended up. Some other specific things that came up is the idea of overflows. So if you live in a place that has combined sewer systems and stormwater systems, and you will regularly deal with overflows during rainy seasons. The health risks associated with wastewater pollution, and then, like Kirsten was saying, stormwater also. So some folks will distinguish between stormwater and wastewater if they're thinking of wastewater as just sanitary sewage. In our cases here, we kind of looked at the whole thing, including stormwater. The other things that kind of came up as I was looking more is, who is accountable for wastewater and stormwater pollution? What are the regulations around it? How do you clean it up? And then again, with more recent events, what sort of disaster response can there be around this issue when it becomes an urgent thing, not just a monitoring thing, but like we need to do something about it now kind of thing. So just a definition of how we thought about wastewater here as we were doing our research is that generic sort of used water category. So from households, businesses, industries, including sanitary wastewater, that is sewage, and then also including surface runoff and stormwater. So a lot of the materials that we have will touch on different aspects of it. Importantly, not just the definition, but then when is it a problem? So this is, I realize this is kind of a subjective question because there are problems that are like unplanned. So there could be problems with sewage pipes and septic systems. This could be leaks and clogs. These are things that you don't typically want to happen. Wastewater treatment plants might not be working effectively in what they're doing to clean wastewater. There could also be illicit discharges. That's like illegal dumping into storm sewer systems. And then there are things that are actually like by design, but one could argue that it leads to problems anyway. So this idea of combined sewer overflows. So cities that have storm sewers and sanitary sewers sharing one pipe during times of heavy rain, they are designed to overflow so that untreated sewage ends up in receiving bodies of water. For instance, New York City has something like maybe some percentage, it might be 40% or 60%, I can't remember the exact number, but of the city is served by a combined sewer system. So this is designed to be that way. Some places also by design release untreated sewage into receiving bodies of water. So the city of Victoria in British Columbia, where I'm from BC, only last year started treating their wastewater, their sewage, instead of releasing it directly into the harbor, which then flowed into Puget Sound, where I live now. And similarly, stormwater systems, when they are separate, generally that water goes untreated, and that again is by design. So any of these situations, either like the unplanned problems or the things that arrive by the way that our systems are designed, can expose people to polluted wastewater through recreation in contaminated waters, eating contaminated seafood, or drinking contaminated water. And even when everything is working as designed, there's potential to encounter wastewater pollution. So the resources that we're going to talk about are focusing on sort of some of these likely problems. Just a bit of a note on where we've organized things on this topic on the Public Lab website. So we have a tag page at publiclab.org/tag/wastewater, it's a mouthful. That's where you'll find all the latest content about wastewater on Public Lab. So you'll see posts there, you'll see questions that people have asked, wiki pages that are related to there, and the people who have been involved in the conversation on the website on that topic. And where we kind of knit all this stuff together, these questions, these posts, and provide a bit more background is on a collaborative wiki page at publiclab.org/wastewater. And it's for anyone who's signed up to Public Lab and logged in, you can go and edit that page, add information you have. We want people to share their knowledge on there, so please go ahead and feel free to do that. Okay, so how can you tell if you're seeing a wastewater problem? So this is for folks who might not have a lot of knowledge about wastewater pollution. This is definitely some like a role I would have filled before I started looking into this. So we have a question out on the Public Lab website. What are some observable telltale signs of wastewater pollution? And Public Lab community member Jesse provided this really amazing, helpful response to this question, listing specifically signs of undertreated organic wastewater. So this might be something that comes from a wastewater treatment plant, where the treatment might not be totally working as desired. And then Alejo translated this very helpfully into Spanish. So we have that is there, that well as there as well. So I encourage you to go there and check it out because it's a really detailed response. The takeaway I've got here is the clues for undertreated organic wastewater is an odor that's just, it's not something you're expecting there. So it's either really sweet can indicate a problem, or like a rotten egg smell can also indicate a problem. Similarly, something you can observe with senses is cloudy water. So something that's milky, light gray, brown, those colors can indicate a problem. And then also if you see like dark brown or black mud at the discharge site, that's another clue. So again, there's a lot more detail in that question post on the website, but we're gonna start to use this as like, okay, so how do we clue into that there's an issue? The first thing is just kind of use some, do some observation to see that there might be a problem. And for stormwater systems, and in this case, most of the time, the water isn't treated before it's released into the environment. There are similar common signs of something entering the storm sewer system that's not supposed to be there. So if you see dry weather flow, it hasn't rained for at least 3 days and you're starting to see water come out of a drainage pipe, that usually means something's going down in there and that isn't supposed to be, that it's not stormwater. Direct sewage presence, so you're seeing things that indicate that there's raw sewage coming through there, also not supposed to be going through that, supposed to be going to wastewater treatment. If you see suds, so soap bubbles, or if you see an oil sheen on the water, this is again some clues that there might be stuff going into the storm sewer system that generally shouldn't be going in there. So once you think there might be a problem, then what can you do? So we have featured on our website some getting started activities that focus on observing and documenting pollution. And on that wastewater wiki page that I was mentioning, it's in a section called Some Places to Start. So this is hopefully where community members who are just getting into investigating this issue can do some pretty accessible activities. So we're gonna just talk about a couple of them. One of the most straightforward things you can do is just photo documentation. So we've got some activities about things you might want to record as you're taking a photo. And you can also post photos that you have to the Public Lab website, and we can kind of gather some input on what might be happening. You can also document other information that you have about the site, that you're seeing about the site along with the photos. And then for an example of how to do that, I'm going to hand it over to Alejo to describe a tool for supporting that.
Well, this tool, the APR mobile application, is part of an activity, a step-by-step activity that is called "How do I assess the quality of an aquatic environment with my mobile phone?" And it's just that. I mean, this mobile app is available in the App Store for all Android devices. For the Apple Store is not available yet, but there is a web application. I mean, you could search the APR website, and you can go to the website, and you can do the evaluation through the browser, for example. And it's very intuitive and very easy to use. You have a button that you put analyze the freshwater environment, and after that they ask the name of the place that you are wanted to evaluate, and it takes your GPS position, or you can choose it and put it manually. And after that, you have several questions about the environment. Some things that you can see just with your eyes, or you can smell, for example, like garbage, animals, if there is it, if there is the river between walls or not, and the type of bottom of the river. And after of all these questions, you have an evaluation. You have an environmental quality index value, and you have some warnings. For example, you get a value that it's not so well, but it tells you some not good aspects of the environment. For example, the garbage is not good for environment, but odors could be indicating water pollution with the organic matter. And you have a value of the evaluation, and then you can share it. This application invites you to share your data and get some points, and there is like a rank for the people that is sharing more information. And with that information, if you use the app, you have are collaborating with an open citizen science project that is assessing the water quality around the world. Is mainly in South America, but there is evaluation around the world. How and you can see it on this map down on the right.
Thanks, Alejo. And another getting started activity we have, once you've got some information on a potential problem, so maybe you have that photo, you have some of the information that Alejo is mentioning, you can document also in the Avier app, then you can contact your local regional environmental agency to report the problem. So the exact person or agency in charge of the problem will vary depending on what and where the problem is. Whether it's from like a treatment plant, for instance, or in the storm sewer system. We've got a step-by-step activity on how to find the pollution reporting phone number for cities in the US. Cities or towns that have a separate storm sewer system are required to have a program for detecting and eliminating stormwater pollution. So even if you're not sure if the pollution you're observing falls under this category, contact someone because it's better to report it, because a state agency or waterkeeper organization may be able to take your observation and contact the right person. So a lot of the information on this slide actually I learned from talking to Kirsten. So there's sort of like 3 potential places that you could contact if you're seeing some pollution enter the storm sewer system. Cities and towns, so that's what the activity that we have focuses on. They might be the fastest to respond with the needed equipment. There's also county or state environmental agencies, so that might be helpful if in the case of who's in charge is not well known, or if the city that you've contacted is unresponsive. And then waterkeeper organizations like Kirsten's, like Resources, they also have a hotline for reporting pollution, and they can contact the appropriate people if you're not sure who to contact as well. And a bonus with them, these waterkeeper organizations, is they might have specific apps you can also use to document and report pollution directly. And then guides for what to look out for locally. So Resources has a guide for Bellingham, where I live, on how to spot and report pollution. So these organizations, which are distributed all over the country may have more sort of specific information to your locale as well. Also, if you haven't observed any specific pollution in your area, but are just interested in looking up water body health where you are, there are some tools for that too. We have another activity on how to use this US Environmental Protection Agency tool called How's My Waterway? And it's a searchable database where you can enter your location, any address, or any watershed you're interested in, and see a map of water bodies near you. And this is an interactive map where they color code essentially like how things are looking health-wise, if they're looking healthy or impaired. And this is based on information. It could be from a few years ago, like for instance, the creek that I looked up here, the last reported data was in 2012, which is a long time ago, but I did see other watersheds which had more recent data. So it depends on when the cities are reporting this data. But the screenshot that I've shown here is from Lower Whatcom Creek, which is near me. And you can see by the red color there where what they call bacteria and other microbes in this category are negatively impacting water quality. In this case, when I looked further into the report, the bacteria was identified as fecal coliform, so it's probably a wastewater issue. So really, really neat tool. And also the EPA has a lot more specific tutorials on how to dive deeper into this tool, but we've got pretty introductory activity on the Public Lab website for using this tool. So these getting started activities that we have, they don't involve anyone needing to get into the water to test or sample it. If you want to get a little more into the science and doing some sampling, there are methods for detecting potential wastewater pollution. So we have compiled these methods at a wiki page, publiclab.org/detecting wastewater. And again, it's collaborative. Please go add any information that you'd like to share there. We focused it around some water quality characteristics that you can investigate with some more accessible methods. So water color or clarity, odor. Alejo mentioned, you mentioned that as something that you associate with wastewater as well. Water temperature and conductivity. Also things that indicate potential pollution in the form of chemicals or components. So we're going to go into detail into each of these. On the water color or clarity side, the reason why that this is potentially a character to monitor is because suspended particles, chemicals, or microorganisms normally associated with wastewater can make that water cloudy. This is what we saw as a clue of a wastewater, organic wastewater, or something entering the storm sewer system that's not supposed to be there. So we already talked about photo documentation for this, but you can also use existing satellite imagery for aerial photos, or you can do some balloon or kite mapping. Grab a balloon mapping kit for about $100 US for the parts. And then grab aerial photos to get a larger view of what you're looking at. Possibly you can pair this with some multispectral imaging. On the right, that image there is a balloon mapping image, if an infrared image of a likely sewage flow in the Gowanus Canal in New York City. You can also directly measure turbidity, which is how cloudy the water is on a relative scale. Something pretty inexpensive, a Secchi disc for about $20 US will help you measure turbidity. You lower it into the water, and then when you can't see it anymore, you measure that depth. So the cloudier the water, the shorter that depth will be. If you want to try out a sensor, there are a lot of commercially available sensors, and there's also DIY options as well, like this prototype from Public Lab member Will McFarland for about $50 US for parts. You can create a sensor for measuring turbidity as well. Odor, like we mentioned, so treated water, clean water should have either no smell or a slightly earthy smell. Anything else than that will indicate a likely problem. So you can take an odor log. We've got an activity on the public lab website on how to just like make an odor log, location, what you're smelling, how strong it is, what else might be there. And that sort of information can add to the documentation as well. Water temperature is another thing that can tell you about possible wastewater pollution. So the reason why is discharged water can often be warmer than the receiving water body that it's going into. This includes sewage and also industrial wastewater as well. So a particularly neat method, or I thought it was neat for detecting this, is a thermal fishing bob. So for about $50 in parts, you can create a way to measure and visualize temperature changes in water. And you create this container, a waterproof floating container with a temperature sensor sticking out. So that's where that red arrow is pointing to, a temperature sensor that will be in contact with the water. And inside is a 3-color LED, a tiny computer like an Arduino Nano, and then a power source, in this case, a 9-volt battery. Put that all together. So there's your little fishing bob, the thing that floats in the water. Cast it into the water, throw it into the water with a rope, and then tow it along the water and take a long exposure photograph. What you see then is as the water temperature changes and that sensor picks it up, the LED changes color as well. So from blue to reds where you see the warmer water. So this is where you can start to visualize how water temperature is changing. In this image here, you see warmer water near an outflow from a power plant, which is releasing warm water into the environment. The presence of certain chemicals or living things can also suggest pollution from wastewater. And one example chemical is optical brighteners. So these are chemicals often added to laundry detergents that help make fabric appear whiter under sunlight. And when they're under UV light coming from sunlight, they glow, they fluoresce. So if you're seeing optical brighteners in water out in the environment, that suggests that there's pollution from household wastewater, and that wastewater is usually mixed with sewage. So there are standard operating procedures around detecting optical brighteners in water, and Alejo tested and documented an activity for detecting these chemicals pretty simply. I'm going to pass it over to Alejo again to share more about this activity.
Well, this activity is called how to detect optical brighteners going to a river. These optical brighteners are indicators of wastewater, some kind of wastewater, because optical brighteners are some substances that are present in laundry soap, in some dishes soap and toilet paper, tissue papers, or all things that are related with personal care and hygienic activities that we make. And these substances get dissolved in water, in water used in houses. And if the drainage, stormwater drainage is broken, or it has contamination, is misconnected, maybe we can have optical brighteners on this wall. And what happens? Well, tampons are one of the few things in personal care products that are made of cotton, and it has not optical brighteners, because toilet paper it has, tissue paper it has. And then when you use a UV light lamp, the tampons didn't glow. But if there is optical brighteners dissolved in water, you can see in this image of the down right, that the tampons glow. They absorb the optical brightness dissolved in water, and then it's a cheap and easy way to detect if the if some water, some drainage, for example, is misconnected or has some kind of pollution in which optical brightener are present. That is all, Jeanette.
Thanks, Alejo. Okay, and then I'll go to the next slide, which again is another method that Alejo tested in the field and then wrote up an activity about as well.
Well, that is related not with some chemical in water. I mean, right here in this activity, we don't measure directly chemicals, but we detect some aquatic life and we use it as indicators. Then the activity is called "How do I assess the quality of a river with aquatic insects that are bioindicators?" But what is a bioindicator? Well, we made a wiki page about what is a bioindicator, and bioindicator are organisms or part of organisms or communities of organisms that contain information on quality of the environment or a part of the environment. Then thus in rivers we can find different species or group of species that are more typical of, for example, a pristine stream or a river that is in good conditions. We are going to find a lot of mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies, and when the river is more polluted, these species that I mentioned are not more present anymore, and other kind of aquatic animals are more present, and then it appears in big proportion bloodworms, leech, bugfly larvae, and then measuring the percent of one kind of animals and one kind of, for example, sensitive animals or good quality animals, and the percent of bad quality environment animals, we can take have an idea of how much polluted or not is a river or a stream. That it's all.
Thanks, Alejo. Yeah, a lot of information that Alejo put together on these bioindicators for water quality. So those are some of the methods that we have documented on the Public Lab website, some of them newly developed, especially by Alejo. So how does all this, these things that community scientists can do, how does this fit into the broader regulatory framework? Well, in the US, at least, the federal regulations around wastewater are under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES. This is part of the Clean Water Act. So it regulates discharges from municipal and industrial wastewater treatment plants, like sewage treatment plants, but it also includes municipal and industrial stormwater discharges in those systems that have separate permitted systems. We are looking for more information on regulations in other regions of the world, so please, again, feel free to add to the wiki page any information that you have. What can community members do within this regulatory framework? How can they engage with this topic locally? So like we said, observing and reporting pollution to the agencies. You can also participate in public comment on any new NPDES permits that are coming up. If you know about those permits, then you have an opportunity to share your opinions about that before it gets approved and goes into effect. And there's also some federal funding that you can talk to your local representatives about to help fund local projects for water quality management and infrastructure, specifically around stormwater often. So for instance, that 319 grant program for states and territories that can support green infrastructure in a local community. That can be like a bioswale that filters stormwater and helps clean it before it enters the storm sewer system and gets released into a local body of water. So yeah, check out the website for some more information on essentially like advocacy around this issue. This is also in sort of what we're saying is like a typical situation. In a situation that's a bit more urgent, a disaster scenario, there is a question on the Public Lab website right now that's getting a lot of good conversation around it. This was posted by another Public Lab fellow who is in New Orleans, asking, what can you do about oil in your ditch following a natural disaster? So when traditional resources and normal pathways aren't available. So the conversation happening there now is, what can you do to clean up the issue yourself if you can't call out someone to do it, depending on the size of it? And then also, who can you contact potentially when these normal pathways of reporting are just maybe inundated and they're not able to respond? So hopefully, again, this is something we can touch on in the discussion that we'll have after the break. So we're just wrapping up here, just a couple more slides. Out of all this work, we identified some places where development can go, specifically on hardware or on things that community groups can do. So one of the easier ones I think we could do is just create like a hot sheet of local and regional pollution reporting hotlines. Some places that I looked up the numbers for were really easy to find. Other ones were just like deep in a PDF somewhere. So, you know, just pulling out that number, making it available to people, I think be a great activity to do. There's a lot of spectrometer enthusiasts at Public Lab. So there's a couple things I think that we could do to bring in some DIY spectrometry into this issue. So there's a new paper coming out soon from the USGS on using optical sensors to detect sewage contamination in the Great Lakes. So they're tying sewage contamination to a specific fluorescence. It was specifically, for instance, fluorescence spectrometry. This is a lot of big mouthful. So they're doing developing methods there. Not quite in the DIY sphere yet, but there's definitely opportunity to develop there. More spectrometry, modifying equipment that we have into fluorometers for detecting optical brighteners, into luminometers for doing bio and chemiluminescence tests. I think there's a lot of potential to just expand the range of tools that we have to get more specific about actual wastewater pollution and toxicity. And then this one is really like, it's maybe more of like a way downstream kind of goal, but enabling more recycling of the biosolids that come from wastewater treatment. Typically they end up in a landfill. So once you've created these biosolids, there's the potential for using them as fertilizers, but before you do that, you need to isolate and remove persistent chemicals from them, things that would just end up polluting the environment just in another location. So you've got those next step challenges outlined on that wastewater wiki. And finally, if there's any of this that you want to contribute to, post questions, anything like that, just follow along. You can sign up for free at Public Lab, follow the topics that we've been talking about, post any questions, ideas, or experiences you have. That's on the website. You can also drop into any of our weekly open calls that happen on Tuesday. We'll also have another community call on water quality, just a broad open call about this issue that'll likely happen in a few months in December. We also have a couple more events associated with this topic this week. Today there's a guest speaker panel, which Alejo will be leading. And then also we have a live build on Friday of a community microscope, specifically recreating like a dissecting microscope, and then how you can look at aquatic insects under that microscope for assessing water quality. So that is the presentation part. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. move the camera back over so I'm looking at a normal spot. Alrighty, and then we are at 10 minutes near the top of the hour. So I just want to say again, thank you all so much for coming, sharing your time and your ideas, and a particular special thanks to anyone that we talked to. Kirsten, it was really great to meet you in person. That was such a treat. And then the folks who were able to hop on our open calls, but then weren't able to make it today. So we were glad that we got to talk to you through that 3-month period. We'll be writing up some notes on this session, and then also everything that happened over the last few months, and then posting that to the website along with the video, the recording of this. And then yeah, you can mark down on your calendars the next time we're going to talk about water quality again in December. So we'll just break now for let's do 10 minutes. So we'll start at 2 minutes after the hour. So we get a full 10-minute break, and then that's when we'll just kind of open it up to a pretty informal discussion time. If you need to hop off, no problem. We'd love to see you for another time, but we will keep the call going, just pause some recording and turn off videos, and then we'll be back at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. Thanks. So hi Juan, my name is Jeanette and I am the research manager at Public Lab. I'm calling from Bellingham, Washington in the United States. And yeah, I've been working with Alejo on gathering materials on wastewater and stormwater pollution for the last 3 months. So really looking forward to hearing from you today about your questions or experiences around this issue. So thanks for joining. And I'll hand it over to Kirsten again.
Hi, my name is Kirsten McDade, and I'm also in Bellingham, Washington, and that's how I met Jeanette. I work for a nonprofit called Resources, and as the pollution prevention specialist, I do a lot of work with wastewater, particularly stormwater. So really excited to have some other like-minded folks on this call to learn about how you all are addressing this important issue.
I'll jump in and introduce myself. My name's Alana Moore. I'm calling in from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am the KITS program manager at Public Lab. Yeah, that's all. And then I'll popcorn to whoever has not gone and wants to introduce themselves.
Well, Virginia is telling us that is a CONICET fellow. CONICET is the National Research Institute for Argentina, and also is teacher of Córdoba. And she studied general chemistry and pollution and environmental monitoring. And well, Juan, I know a lot. Juan, if you don't mind, I'm going to present him. He's a biologist and he works with a high school that is called Chacra La Merced, that is on downstream the wastewater treatment plant from Córdoba in Argentina, and they have a lot of problem with environmental pollution, mainly sewage. It's a wastewater plant that is not working well at all. And then the river is completely polluted. And there is this high school needs a lot of help, because they know that they are polluted and they know that they need help or some solution in some way. And Juan, no sé si querés agregar algo, o contar algo tuyo, podés escribirlo en castellano. Si querés hablar en inglés, está buenísimo. O si querés hablar en castellano, después te traduzco, no hay problema. Well,
Hola, justo estaba escribiendo en el chat. Bueno, dale, vos me traducís. Bueno, hola a todos. Bueno, como recién les comentó Alejo, soy Juan. Estoy en el grupo de trabajo de Alejo bueno, en la Universidad Nacional de Córdoba. Y bueno, formo parte de un proyecto de extensión universitaria junto a él y bueno, otras personas más. Interactuamos e interaccionamos con un colegio de Chacra de la Merced, que bueno, algo estuvo comentando recién Ale. Pero bueno, para tratar toda esta problemática que está viviendo este barrio en particular, que es un barrio periférico de la ciudad de Córdoba y que se ve seriamente afectado, digamos, por el mal tratamiento que se ha realizado a lo largo de todas estas décadas sobre el curso de agua que pasa junto a este barrio. Así que bueno, y acá, bueno, más que nada venía como para escuchar, digamos, toda la, la, la interacción, digamos, que se generara en este encuentro. Así que, bueno, eso.
well, Juan it was saying that he works with me in the Vigilantes del Agua project. Well, he's very interesting of this tool, because the tools of public lab, because and the topic wastewater, because the people of the Chacra La Merced neighborhood is a neighborhood here that is a neighborhood that is a little forgotten for the city. Is down all the things that are downstream are not so important than the things that are upstream in this city. And I think that in several cities around the world, the same happen. And they have Juan told us that they have a pollution problem of very a lot of time ago. This area of Córdoba city was an area of production of foods like vegetables, and after years of pollution of the river, that they take the water from the river, but the river become very polluted. They not longer produce foods, and then become to extract sand from the coast. There was the economical activity change, and also right now this extraction of sand of the coast of the river made some lagoons, some little lakes or ponds replete of waters, and sometimes people dump garbage in these lagoons to fill it. And well, he was talking something like that, and well, he's very interested in hear what we are going to talk about wastewater. Hi, Gise. Gise is a biologist. I know I know her also, and she said, I'm going to tell some words in Spanish if you don't mind. She said, estoy muy contento que estés acá acompañando, como toda la gente de Public Lab. No sé si querés hacer una breve presentación tuya con el micrófono o escrita, contar a qué te dedicas y por qué estás acá. Y lo podés hacer en castellano o en inglés. Sí. Bueno, lo podés hacer en castellano y lo podés escribir. Well, it's a little scary to in Spanish is yes, in Spanish is okay. It's a little scary for for them to talk in English. But well, the idea of this call is to talk a little about some discussion, or to engage, to provide an opportunity for all the people that is in the call to engage a dialogue, to inform next steps, to express how present information is relevant or not relevant to the experiences and existing knowledge. To become, to talk about this, I'm going to ask if there is something that you want to share about wastewater, or something that you want to know about wastewater, or the ways to share.
Alejo, are you asking for questions now?
Yes, we are waiting for the GISE presentation, but we can become to talk about question or things about related with wastewater.
Oh, no, I'm happy to wait.
Okay. Gise, si querés hablar en castellano, está bárbaro, y yo después te traduzco, no hay drama.
Bueno, hi. I can speak a bit in English, but I don't practice since a lot time, so it's a bit rare to me speaking English now, suddenly. So sorry. Well, I'm gonna go in Spanish. Pero, yo soy Gise, trabajo con Ale en la Universidad de Córdoba. Trabajamos en ecotoxicología en peces. Y Ale, un poco de mi trabajo, ¿necesitas que hable de lo que estoy haciendo?
Sí, dale, contá.
Perfecto.
Contá un poquito.
Nosotros trabajamos en la cuenca del río Suquía, en mi trabajo fundamentalmente está centrado en un gradiente de contaminación ambiental. ¿Querés traducir eso? ¿O cómo hacemos?
She tells us that she's working in National University of Córdoba. She's a partner of mine. We are part of a big group of biologists that make traditional science, studying, doing some ecotoxicological studies, and in the Suquía River Basin, the same place that before I told that they have the big problem of pollution.
Y entonces, bien, mi proyecto, mi trabajo está centrado en un gradiente de contaminación de menos a más contaminado. Tengo 4 sitios de muestreo. Trabajo con una especie que es endémica de acá, un orillero. Y bueno, y tiene un abordaje desde diferentes aspectos de la biología del animal. Dale.
The project, she says is doing a doctoral thesis about the environmental gradient that this in Suquía River Basin. She took 4 sides of the Suquía River, and she's studying several aspects of biology of a little fish that is called the 10-spot liveater. It's similar to the guppies, if no one knows about of aquariums. And well, go on, Gise.
Bueno, los aspectos que evalúo sobre el animal son los siguientes. el estado de salud del animal en cada sitio de muestreo. Después tengo un abordaje genético, en el que lo que tratamos de ver es si las poblaciones a lo largo de ese gradiente varían en su estructura genética. Y el tercer aspecto que evalúo es la morfometría del animal. Tomamos fotos del animal de ambos lados y vemos si hay asimetría. Hay antecedentes de que la contaminación en tempranos estadios de desarrollo embrionario afecta la simetría del animal. Así que tratamos de poner eso también en evidencia. Con esos tres ambientes describimos, con esos tres parámetros tratamos de escribir y evaluar el estado de los animales a lo largo del gradiente.
Lisa tells us that she takes 3 aspects to evaluate the pollution on Suquía River. She has 4 sites along the river, and in each 4 sites, she evaluates from the fishes the general state of health of the animals, the genetic, some genetic parameters, because the hypothesis is that the pollution could affect the genetic diversity on the river of the species, the different population of the fish. This is a fish that didn't migrate.
Not migrate, no. Yes.
Not migrate. And the third aspect is that she's very interesting. She studied the morphometry of the fishes. She see one side of the fish and the other side of the fish, and there is some evidence that the pollution can affect how symmetrical it can be an organism, and well, that is the very interesting project of Gise.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Ali.
I have a question about your work, Gisa, if you don't mind. Are you intending to study the water and using the fish as like a bioindicator, or are you studying the fish themselves? Like, are they a special fish, or like I'm wondering, are you trying to extrapolate to talk about the health of communities who are using that water, or about the water itself, or about the fish themselves?
Claro, me está preguntando si las muestras de agua, ¿no es cierto? Si tomamos muestras de agua. ¿Ale?
Sí, te está preguntando si vos estás usando la especie como bioindicador o estás estudiando la especie porque querés saber cómo es la especie a lo largo del río, o si lo querés extrapolar estos resultados a que la polución, que lo que pasa en el Suquía podría pasar en otro lado.
Sí, la idea es esa, es hacer, digamos, me permite 2 tipos de análisis, porque nos hemos parado, viste, desde los 2 espacios. Si es un buen bioindicador o al revés, digamos, las condiciones del costo. O sea, es como, viste, ¿cómo le podés explicar esa parte nuestra?
A ver, voy a intentar.
¿Te acordás que hablábamos de eso? Que nos da 2 vías. De describir el paisaje, o sea, o también evaluarlo como indicador, porque esas partes no están evaluadas de esa forma.
Yes. Well, at first, the study of Gise is use this species as bioindicator. You know, this is a species that is used a lot in Argentina and in South America. It's widely spread, and yes, the objective is to see if this species could be used as a tool of environmental quality. Indeed, is used also more a model for biosize, but also as bioindicator, as biomonitor in the field. And also, but also she has some problem because voy a agregar unas cosas, she said.
Dale.
Because in some places, before the wastewater treatment plant, this species, the pollution is so big that the species disappear. And that is a problem, a big problem for the thesis, for the project thesis.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's cool. That's part of why I was asking, was thinking what here in Louisiana we could use as a bioindicator, because our ecosystems are already pretty damaged by pollution, as well as, you know, invasive species and other things that would, like, I don't think that there's really a consistent species in Louisiana that I can imagine now, but that's a really cool project. That's awesome work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks. She said a very interesting project and approach. Kristen, do you want to share anything about the things that we was talking about in the last call?
I was actually just writing a chat because I've got to take off. But I did want to share just one technique I have for measuring E. coli. That's been, it's pretty inexpensive. Like if you send a water sample to our local laboratories, it costs about $30. You can do this for about $3. And I've been using it for the last year now, monitoring some stormwater outfalls and some of our local creeks. And I have been amazed at the results I've gotten, like some really, really high E. coli numbers. So it's been a really good conversation piece for me to have with our local stormwater folks that are in charge of the stormwater permits in the city of Bellingham. So I was just going to put that link into the chat there. And I have like protocols written up. There's protocols that other people use as well. It's becoming more and more common. It's not an EPA approved method, but there's a lot of studies that have shown the comparison between the EPA approved method and this method, and to show how accurate it is. And so there's some literature to support that as well. So I'll just pass that on, and I will keep up to date on the things that are on Public Lab too, and just really excited to meet you all. And thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much, Kirsten.
Thanks.
And I hope we get to see each other in person again too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kristen. Very interesting that you share. Okay. It's very interesting that possibility to evaluate E. coli for $3 is completely different than the $30, and mainly so for many communities that maybe $30 is a lot of money. There is a message. It was a pleasure to meet you, Kristen, and thanks for sharing all this information and this link to know more tools to evaluate the topic of wastewater.
All right, see you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Jeanette, I have a question about one of the things you presented about earlier. You mentioned some aspect of the Clean Water Act that they can use to report pollution. Would you call that into the NRCC? Do you like, would that be, because whenever I had worked previously with Scott Eustace, if we notice Clean Water Act violations, there's a note in the US Clean Water Act that says if a waterway is blocked, that it is a violation of the Clean Water Act. So we were told to call those in as a report to the NRCC, which is who intakes, do you know what it stands for?
The National Response. I know what you're talking about.
It's crazy. It's national response and something else. I think that they're a government they're a government agency that was designed at first because of nuclear issues and has now become the umbrella that covers all environmental reporting. So I was wondering, would you also call them in through the same system? If you
That's a
know,
really good question. Yeah. So I think, I don't know if they're connected. So the ones that I was learning about were more for like storm drains that are in your neighborhood. It's kind of like what people will mostly encounter in their communities, like going for a walk or like walking along the waterfront or something, where you might see something ending up going down a storm drain that you're like, that's not supposed to be there. But I think once you report, so reporting to that is to the city. So like the city that holds that permit that needs to clean it up. But then if you contact the state environmental agency as well, they may be connected to NRCC if it's one of those, if it's a big problem like waterway blocked, like navigable waters type issue. So I don't know like how they communicate with each other. I actually don't know that. It's a good question.
yeah, I'm interested because I know one of Public Lab's partners is group Sky Truth. If y'all have heard of them, they monitor for oil and pollution spills using satellite imagery. So they have an algorithm that just goes through satellite images in real time as they're posted from NASA, whoever they're getting the images from. And they use that to correlate with NRC reports because that's public access information. So they take those two data sets and then try and overlap. Are we seeing something that's also being reported by people on the ground? So that's what I was wondering, since again, this is a weird umbrella for a lot of environmental issues. If it's worthwhile to report pollution, like if you smell something bad, if you see milky water or things like that, if you, I don't know, are at a gas station and notice that the attendant is just pouring gas into the streets, can you call that in? And stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, technically you should be able to call like that stuff in to the city. But then I could see that wanting to be tied to NRCC as well. But that's a good question. Maybe we can post that about like what people know about agencies talking to each other.
Sure, I'd love that.
Yeah. And then look like Virginia has a comment here too in the chat.
Okay, yes. Yes, regarding your presentation, Jeanette. Well, she said that the presentation was very interesting to her, and he gives class about river monitoring, but the only activities that could be carried out with laboratory equipment were presented. So the student did not have tools to show the state of the rivers themselves. It is hopefully soon we can include these tools to thought in our classes. I find it very interesting to be able to show the students another way to monitor the river, especially since the river that crossed the city of Córdoba is not very good condition. And I believe that perhaps if the population knows these tools, it may make a more rational use of the resource or take care of a little more. Yes, it's very thanks, Virginia, for the comment. And I don't know, Genevieve, if you want to add or say something about this.
Yeah, thank you. I just added in the chat that if there's anything we can do to help you share those tools with your students, actually put some of those tools into practice, let us know. Because there are things we can do to help make it so that you can get those tools into the hands of people, because that's really ultimately what we want to do at Public Lab.
Yeah, I can speak to that a bit, Rania. As the person doing the kit stuff with Public Lab, we have, microscopes that are made of DIY tools. So it's nuts and bolts and a webcam that you break open and flip that makes a pretty decent enough microscope, and we sell it for 35, I think, USD, which, we're doing a project right now here in New Orleans, having kids go out to the Mississippi River and collect microplastics and then look at them with the microscopes. And one of the biggest aspects of this work we're doing is that the tools to collect data, collect microplastics, to examine them, were too expensive for most, public schools out here to afford. So using the Public Lab tools that we've developed, they're able to afford this sort of thing. I know a microscope wouldn't necessarily be helpful when determining pollution necessarily. I don't think it would zoom enough to be able to really identify much, since we're working with microplastics that are bigger. But we were talking about spectrometry, and Public Lab also has a spectrometer. But yeah, I was wondering, Jeanette, how could that be modified to become a, what do you say, a lumosimeter?
Yeah, that could be a particularly cool collaboration too, because so the luminometer I think is like technically more simple than I'm just guessing this, because you're just measuring light intensity. Like you don't need necessarily to know the exact peaks, like that's not as important. Because the idea is, if you expose a polluted water sample to some bioluminescent bacteria, like the bioluminescence inhibition assay, they will glow less. So if you can quantify that glow with a modified spectrometer, that's one way to do that assay. So there's like the biology part, and then there's the like measuring the light part that we can kind of like DIY it.
Look at the link I just sent in the chat, because I understand the concept of what you're saying, but I do not understand the science that would do that. But I just Googled straight up lumosity detector, and I found some plugins for Arduino.
Yeah, like it might even make more sense to develop it from the ground up rather than try to modify an existing tool if you don't.
That's true, but the Lego spec has a benefit that it is like a light cave.
Oh, yeah.
Black, So I'm thinking you're right about it'd be cool to have it as its own kit, but what if we could have the spectrometer with like these additional add-ins where you just change the cameras and can measure different things, anything that needs to be measured in a black hole,
Exactly. That would be awesome. That's true. Yeah.
Would I just do that with one Google search? That was I love conversations like this, that it's like, oh, that's an easy fix and you can just do it,
Yeah. The biology side of it is like, I know you can also buy the luminescent bacteria. Like I think it's mostly marine bacteria that will glow. So like if you go to places where they live naturally, you go disturb the water, you see this like glow in the water. And the idea of the assay is that when they are exposed to a toxic sample, basically, like they don't function as well, so they glow less. So there have been procedures to quantify like the amount of pollution with the negative impact on their glowing. So like the dimmer they are, the more toxic the sample. And you can buy these bacterial cultures like dehydrated and buy the reagents that, reconstitute them. But like maybe there's a way we could go out and sample them and like grow them ourselves. I don't know. I haven't tried that.
That's cool. I'm envisioning if we had a pollution sensing kit, and it comes with all of the sensors you would need to be able to run these tests on your waterways.
Yeah, and the folks on this call, so like everyone else, like Virginia, Juan, and Jose and Alejo are like, this is like ecotoxicology stuff. So they're also great, you'd be great ones to work on this with. I don't know. Cool. What are your thoughts about, cultivating bacteria for this purpose?
Me personally, as the person doing kits?
Oh, well, anyone's thoughts.
I I personally, I think that the cultivating bacteria, if you have the I mean, Virginia maybe knows more about this because she cultured some fungus, and maybe I think that if the medium of grow medium is the correct, it has, maybe you just need like an incubator, and I think it is not necessary so complicated to do that, but you maybe the most difficult is to find the bioluminescence bacteria. Maybe if you find it in some web store, that the problem is solved in a 90%, maybe. I don't know if someone wants to add to this something. I don't know, maybe Virginia's writing something. But, well, it's very interesting, all the tools that are in public lab, and maybe to get more accessible to the classes for Virginia. Also I could translate some of the tools to Spanish to get more accessible to the Spanish speakers. And maybe Alana, I don't know if what do you think, but maybe if Virginia thinks that any of the tools are interesting for her classes, he can tell me, and I can make a translation of the building steps.
Totally. Yeah, no, I'm super open to that. If communicating this way is more difficult, we can email and talk that way. Whatever works for you guys, I'm super happy to work together and figure something out.
Virginia right here that the bacteria grows more easy than fungus, but I don't know the luminescent bacteria behave. Well, that could be something to test, maybe. But it will be very nice to see this, very visual, to see if something is glowing or not, and very interesting something.
I think using the bioluminescence is such a cool way of doing this too, because like we're in this weird moment that I feel a lot of people are who have not traditionally been involved in science are aware that I guess science affects our day-to-day lives, you know, whether or not you choose to understand it. And with that, there's a lot of people that are like using art as a medium to engage folks who have not been in this discipline more traditionally. And the bioluminescent stuff is, I mean, it's beautiful as it is. It's like a true example of like the wonders of the scientific world that we live in. And like thinking about, I went to Puerto Rico a couple years ago and how many people were in line for those bioluminescent boats, you know, like clearly there is interest in this as a subject, and then using that as like an artistic visual way of saying, you know, your pollution is causing this beautiful thing to die really translates to the state of the world in a tragic but beautiful way.
I understand, and this is a good point, Lana. Well, I don't know if anyone wants to I really I want to ask something to Alana. If something you told about the natural disasters, do you suffer the effects of hurricane? Are you?
So I'm personally very blessed in that I recently bought a house, so it was inspected. I knew it would be safe in the storm, or I hoped. There's no trees around me also. So my home was fine. I had, minor damage. Most of my friends in the area also are okay. Like things did go wrong for a lot of people that I know, but minorly. My family is from Homa, which is one of the towns that was most destroyed and ravaged by the storm. And another blessing, my parents still live there and they're fine. They have an old tree they were expecting to fall in their house. It didn't. They already had a vacation planned when the storm hit, so they just went on a month-long trip instead of a week-long trip. But I want to say 50 to 60,000 people were made homeless, and there is no real effort in dealing with that. A lot of people from the town that I'm from, are living and sleeping in their cars and waiting for the McDonald's to open to have access to internet to file any kind of claims. And claims are being backed up, whether it's going through insurance or FEMA. A lot of people from the area that I'm from live in the house that their great grandfather built on that site when he immigrated to Homa, kind of thing. So they don't have deeds and they don't have insurance and they don't now have anything. So I am good. Everything directly related to me is good, but the town that I was raised in more or less was eliminated. The town might be okay, but the people who made it a community are pretty badly off right now. So
It's very sad.
Yeah, sorry to get dark, but it's something I feel blessed in having been raised in coastal Louisiana, because climate change and the disaster that is, soon to face all of us has been impacting me since I was a child. Like we had storms, we had to evacuate. I understand leaving home and the possibility that you will return to nothing. Like I internalized that at a very young age. And I think it's something, unfortunately, that the whole globe is soon to experience, if it's flooding or fires or tsunamis or earthquakes, So it is tragic, but I do think that it has been beneficial for me and a lot of other people too, to have these experiences in a kind of slow ramping up to the climate crisis that we're in now. Again, sorry it's so dark, but it's really dark down here, honestly.
Yes, and do you know if there was any wastewater problem related with the storm and the disaster this?
Directly in New Orleans, the storm did not hit us too badly. The disaster was infrastructural. So we have a monopoly power system throughout the city and a lot of the state as well. Only one company provides power. They can do absolutely whatever they want because they own all the lines, all the plants, all the things. There was a tower that fell and left the city without power for a month, meaning that all the rainwater that got washed in wasn't really able to be pumped out, So that created a huge issue here in the city where people are stranded with no power, trying to go outside in order to get some reprieve from the heat, and the streets are flooded, their cars are trash, they can't even use it to charge their phones. That was the situation here in New Orleans. I'm not quite sure of how things are going in the areas that were more directly hit, but those places also are at the end of the line of a lot of bayous and rivers that have a lot of industrial plants in them, So I think in this way that this is a compounding disaster. There's the housing crisis that makes it a disaster. There's COVID, there's climate change, there's all of this. I am pretty certain that all the areas south of New Orleans are, toxic now, straight up. Like a lot of these communities had feet and feet of sand and mud from the waterways from the Gulf pushed up into their property. And like, what's in that sand? You know, what's in those materials? What's in the water that is, you know, polluting their homes? I don't think that that's going to even be checked or monitored, because I think that I don't know. I think that they're triaging this crisis, and that is not going to be considered, unfortunately.
Okay, that is
Keep getting darker.
complicated. Yes. Well, but I think that before this disaster, maybe the people get more conscious about the things that we do make consequences, and maybe hopefully the people get more careful of the environment and the things that are around there.
I hope so.
I want to, I don't know if someone has to share something else. We are near to the hour. I don't know, Jeanette, if you want to tell something.
Yeah, I'm happy to wrap up near the end. I didn't want to ask before we just close the call. Juan, actually, you're mentioning, you know, where you are is kind of a place that's been forgotten by the city upstream, and I'm wondering, who are there people working with you on monitoring the location where you are? So like, who, like, people have forgotten you, but do you have a community there of people who are working with you and supporting in some way?
Are you asking to Juan?
Yeah.
Juan, pregunta Jeanette es si esta comunidad de la que nosotros hablamos, que está en la parte de la ciudad que está un poco postergada, si ellos tienen alguna forma de monitorear el ambiente o algo por el estilo.
Se refiere como a cuestiones técnicas, digamos, si ellos regularmente, de manera sistemática, hacen como un monitoreo, toman muestras de agua y eso lo analizan. ¿Eso sería la pregunta? O en general, digamos, como la percepción, digamos, de ambientalmente, digamos, si ellos son conscientes o perciben, digamos, los cambios que han ido sufriendo su territorio y su curso de agua en todo este periodo de tiempo de estas décadas, digamos. O sea, no sé si va más como la
creo que
percepción
va
ambiental o más como algo más tecnicista, digamos, de si hacen algo rutinariamente, digamos.
Va por los dos lados, me parece, en general.
Me parece que, bueno, por lo que hemos estado trabajando con Ale y de las veces que hemos charlado con algunas personas de allá, de la comunidad, respecto a los monitoreos con cierta periodicidad, me parece que no los están haciendo. Y en cuanto a la percepción ambiental, tengo entendido que hay determinadas personas, como determinados sectores, que sí vienen, digamos, como registrando, digamos, todo este deterioro ambiental, digamos, al cual están siendo sometidos, pero también hay como cierta tendencia, el resto de la población, como a una especie de naturalización, ¿no? de esa degradación ambiental. Quizás, digamos, con quienes hemos estado más interactuando, sí, digamos, ellos han percibido, digamos, cómo se ha ido cambiando, cómo ha ido cambiando el ambiente a lo largo de todo este tiempo, que particularmente hemos estado interactuando con profes, con una chica de Dayana, digamos, es con quien más hemos estado charlando sobre esto, que ella trabaja en el cole, en un cole secundario de ahí de Chacra de la Merced, y que bueno, que justamente estamos queriendo como a través de ella y otros docentes bueno, que no se naturalice, digamos, y que los estudiantes tengan como una visión como más crítica, digamos, y puedan como tener como esta visión histórica, digamos, de que el ambiente no existe o no es tal cual es hoy por una cuestión natural, sino por una cuestión histórica de cómo se ha ido, el tipo de acciones que se ha ido realizando sobre el entorno y hasta tal punto que llegaron a la situación en la que se encuentran hoy en día. Pero me parece que gran parte de la población de alguna manera lo tiene naturalizado, lamentablemente, y está bueno eso como tratar de revertirlo.
Buenísimo, gracias, Juan. Juan told us that the community, this part of the city that is little forgotten by the city, they have no the mediums to monitoring the environment, and because of that they have no the money to monitoring, because doing a monitoring of the quality of the environment is a very expensive. But he tells that also the population that is there has there is some people that are very aware of this problem of the river, but also there is a lot of people that is get used to the pollution, and then they forget the river. They don't want to go to there. But there is people that is working to be visibilized, to get more yes, more visible to the problem of pollution. And well, also with Juan, we was working to get some cheap and useful tools to measure the pollution. Well, that is all.
Thank you, Juan. Thanks for that answer. Yeah. So we are reaching the top of the hour, and just wanted to let people know, if you need to leave at the time, that we just really appreciate you all joining the call and sharing questions and the projects that you're working on. It's really fascinating, and I'm just always so excited to hear about what other people are doing and what they're teaching. So it just makes me feel just happy to know that there are people working on these issues as like really like realistically dark and pressing as they are, but everyone's trying, right? So that always makes me feel good. And Alejo, yeah, thank you for posting that. If there is anything you'd like to receive updates on after this call, we will be posting the recording on the Public Lab website. If you want to leave your email address or any like feedback on how this call was, please feel free to fill out a short feedback form. The link there is in the chat. But I really just want to thank you for being here, and hope to see everyone again soon.
Thanks to everyone to be here, and I'm very happy to know, just like Jeanette and Alana, and she's and Juan and Virginia, that there is people that are not losing the faith to change the things.
Yeah, it's honestly really comforting to talk to y'all across the world and, understand that we're all going through similar struggles. It, makes me feel like there's more solidarity than I do just looking out my window. Thanks, y'all.